Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers, and later Kentucky's Attorney General Russell Coleman will join us and give some updates on actions the state's top law enforcement official is taking. But first, this year's president of the Kentucky Association of Counties knows personally what a tough year that it has been for many local officials. The harsh winter that led up to flooding across the state has strained the resources of cities and counties all around the Commonwealth. Harlan County Judge Executive Dan Mosley is currently serving as president of KACO. He knows what it's like for local leaders trying to clean up from another natural disaster here in Kentucky. And I understand you even had some damage, Mr. President, Mr. Judge, and at your own home as you were trying to deal with the response in Harlan County.
Yes, Bill, another disaster that has presented a whole lot of challenges for our counties and cities across Kentucky. You mentioned that my home was struck by a tree during the wind that came through after the flooding on that Saturday. But fortunately, we were unharmed and the repairs are underway. Many of our counties, though, in the east have gotten hit very, very hard, not just this time, but just a few years after the 2022 floods.
How do you assess the response of state and local leaders, those first boots on the ground, in trying to deal with a situation like this flooding?
Our local officials have done a great job, and they've been supported very well by our state emergency management. The governor has been on the ground already in eastern Kentucky, as well as local legislators in hearing what the needs are, trying to figure out how much damage has occurred, put a price tag on that. Damage assessment was delayed a lot in those areas, though, because response went on for a couple of days, and then we were hit by 4 to 8 inches of snow that fell Wednesday and Thursday. So that really put kind of a delay in the process of assessing how much damage occurred. But Director Eric Gibson with Kentucky Emergency Management has been wonderful. They've had people on the ground with their regional emergency management directors to support the efforts of our local emergency managers.
In a situation like this and day to day, do people have reasonable expectations of county governments these days, what your capabilities are and what, do those align with what they would like to see happen?
Well, I think we live in a society where expectations are probably higher today maybe than they once were, and I think that social media certainly makes those louder than maybe in the past. And but in local government, we're charged with the responsibility of looking out for the health and welfare and public safety of the people we serve, and that's always our top priority, whether it's during a time when it's a sunny 70-degree day or whether it's when there's a flood or a winter storm. And we have amazing personnel in all areas of local government that are there to respond when times are tough. And I'm thankful for the people in my county, and I'm thankful for those that are out there responding in times of crisis, wading through floodwaters to rescue people, literally putting their own lives in danger to clear roadways on these mountainous terrains that we have in the east. Or going into a building in the west when we had tornadoes hit out there. These people put their own lives in jeopardy to respond to this work, and I always want people to understand that sometimes our expectation of response may be that it should be quicker than it is, but I assure you the people that are doing it are doing their very best.
What issues are you watching in the current session of the General Assembly? I know you're coming to Frankfort quite often and talking with lawmakers. They will often pass mandates on to local governments. Are you watchful of that?
Well, we're always watchful of that. In the General Assembly, we've had some great wins for local governments in the last few sessions. 2024 session, we saw a pot of money created that allows us to tap into to match federal funding. It allows us to leverage funds from the federal government. Counties that may not have had the ability to match funding can apply to the state now for match to be able to go after and leverage federal opportunities. That's a huge win. Also, transportation funding. There was additional funding put in for roads and bridges, infrastructure, water and sewer projects. So we've had great successes. This time around, trying to protect county revenue streams. Counties can generate revenues 3 ways. occupational, insurance premium tax, and property tax. That's the only three ways that we generate revenue. So just trying to protect that, but also trying to figure out a solution to jail funding. Jails are really bankrupting county budgets. Before COVID, it wasn't as much of an issue, but post-COVID, due to the increased cost of incarceration combined with fewer state inmates generating state revenue, has really put local governments in a pinch. In my county, for instance, the worst year we had subsidizing from the general fund was $250,000 to $300,000 pre-COVID. Since then, we've been $750,000 to $1 million a year subsidizing our jail fund from the general fund. So it's something. It's a partnership. Jails are a partnership between county and state government, and that's an issue that we've really been trying to focus on to try to figure out some solutions, especially from a funding perspective.
There's a proposed constitutional amendment that would freeze the property valuation for tax purposes for Kentuckians 65 or older for their primary residence, and I understand KACO is trying to seek some input on that as to what impact that might have.
Yeah, it would have an impact on many budgets across county governments, but it also would impact the state because the state gets a portion of the property tax as well. I don't think there's a lot of appetite up there in my conversations with constitutional amendments. Those haven't went very well, as we've seen in recent history. So I would be surprised if that moves, but it certainly would hurt not only local governments but the state government as well.
What priorities do you have in 2025? What are your goals during this time that you're serving as president of KACO and are able to lead and talk with the other judge executives?
Really, two main priorities is focus and continuing on the opioid epidemic that has ravaged our state and really everywhere in the nation. Focusing on ways that we can work together to implement things in our community and focus on prevention efforts. We need to really be targeting our youth and how we ever keep anyone from using to begin with. I appreciate the work that's going on with the Kentucky Opioid Abatement Commission. They are supporting work. Operation Unite in the 5th Congressional District is going statewide now, and that is going to be important to help with prevention efforts. So focusing on things that are working well across the country and implementing those here in Kentucky. I'm working with the NACO Opioid Solutions Leadership Network along with Judge Taylor at Madison and Judge Moore at Boone. We found some very innovative things across the country that are going on that we hope to see implemented in Kentucky. Also, strategic planning. I mean, we have found ourselves in Kentucky here over the last 5 years in disaster after disaster after disaster. And you oftentimes have to go back and figure out, what was I working on before when times were good? What was I working on before this disaster struck? So trying to focus on strategic planning so that county officials have a way to go back and say, well, we're going to work this, we're going to plan our work, as my congressman says, Congressman Rogers, plan our work and work our plan, and that's a goal. You invite people to Harlan County, and lots of things are going on there. I'll give you a few seconds to tell us what. Yes, Harlan County is a beautiful place. You experience 4 seasons. We've got people moving from all over the country that have remote work jobs because of broadband expansions that we've made. But to come and visit, we have a beautiful off-road park, over 7,000 acres of off-roading, if you like to do that, Black Mountain Off-Road Adventure Area, and then Portal 31, which is a historic ride through the history of mining in central Appalachia. It takes you back to 1915 and walks you through the changes in mining. We call it Harlan's Disney Ride. It is a real treasure, and it takes about 30 minutes to ride through there. Animatronics tell the story of mining and our culture, and something we're very proud of the rich heritage that we have in eastern Kentucky. Do you have some people that move in that they would just want to get away from it all, and so they go to somewhere like Harlan County for sort of peace and quiet, and maybe can work from home? Or we have had a gentleman move from Florida recently, bought a tract of property in the area that I live in. He works remotely for a bank, and he's an IT analyst. loves the quietness, the peace and the quiet. Met a couple that moved here from California. They didn't like the traffic, and they bought a home sight unseen off of Zillow, and realtors are seeing that constantly in our part of the state, and we welcome those people to be a part of our special Appalachian Way.
All right, the Harlan County Judge Executive Dan Mosley, currently serving as the president of the Kentucky Association of Counties, KACO. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody stay with us now here on Kentucky Newsmakers. We're coming right back with Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman in just a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Good to have you with us. We're going to get an update now from Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman, the former FBI agent and federal prosecutor. He is Kentucky's top law enforcement official. His office has been busy in recent months with his own initiatives, pressing for legislation and recovering some money from entities that acknowledge they've caused Kentucky problems. Coleman has also joined some of his colleagues from other states in some federal actions. Attorney General Coleman is with us today. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Good to see you.
Always honored to be in this chair, Bill.
I appreciate you. We want to go through just sort of some of the issues. You've been working on domestic violence is one area. The deaths of a mother and daughter in Elizabethtown before they were to appear in court over a protective order was something you cited as you pressed for tougher domestic violence penalties.
They were attempting to seek some assistance from the court system. They were shot and killed by their offender essentially on the back porch, the back parking lot of the county attorney's office in Hardin County. The Hardin County Attorney's Office became first responders in trying to save the lives of those two victims. Their offender was lying in wait. There are maybe not as egregious as that, but there are examples across this Commonwealth of offenders continuing to offend, continuing to harm. Our goal is deterrence. We want to punish the offenders. We want to incapacitate them. But the gold standard in law enforcement, and that's in any of these offenses, but especially in domestic violence, is to deter the conduct. And so our priority, my priority as Attorney General this session, this short session, as we call it at the General Assembly, is to seek enhanced penalties for repeat offenders, those that continue to offend. We want to elevate these misdemeanors, a series of misdemeanors, to felony offenses.
Do you believe that will be an effective deterrence? That's the goal, right?
That's certainly the goal, and I applaud the leadership of Chairman Tipton. It's these days, those that view you, Bill, might scratch their heads at thinking that R's and D's never work together. The bill that Chairman Tipton carried, enhancing these penalties, passed out of the House of Representatives unanimously. Think about that, unanimously. We are rowing together, and my hope is at the end of this session we'll be able to enhance these penalties, and then it's up to me, it's up to prosecutors and law enforcement to get the message out there to offenders that if you continue to harm, that you're looking at serious time, that you're looking at felony offenses, and so we want to deter.
You also unveiled a domestic violence prosecution manual. What was its purpose? I know you've talked a lot about getting everybody on the same page, and that allows local prosecutors to have a standard, right?
Well, it's what we call in the Attorney General's office zealous collaboration. It means we tear down silos. You've heard me say, sitting here, that oftentimes our biggest limiting factor in law enforcement is not resources, although we could always use more resources. It's not personnel, although that's always a challenge. It's what it says on our badge. It's the fact that we traditionally in law enforcement have not always worked well across jurisdictions. These manuals that you reference, both a domestic violence resource manual as well as a strangulation manual, these are, as horrific as they sound on their face, these are tools for prosecutors, for first responders, for the medical community, for social workers to use, to have one-stop shopping in how they help victims, how they both respond to victims that have been injured so that they can help provide services regionally. For prosecutors, these are tough cases. Some prosecutors may not handle domestic violence cases regularly, so making sure that we have all of the elements that law enforcement has investigated. But then in terms of the strangulation manual, the General Assembly has elevated this offense of strangulation. What shocked me, Bill, is the data says if you put your hands on a victim, you strangle a victim, the data says you're significantly more likely to become a killer you're significantly more likely to murder that victim, but we're also seeing that the nexus between those that strangle and those that kill police officers are present.
So, an area of emphasis, obviously. Our drug problem in Kentucky is well known, from deadly overdoses to the ruined lives and families out there. You brought UK and U of L together for a program you called Better Without It. Your goal in that initiative, obviously, is prevention, right?
We have failed at prevention in this state. We are finally doing a better job on the treatment leg of the stool, that three-legged stool. We finally have sufficient beds. We have more beds for treatment per capita than any state in the nation. Enforcement, that's going after those that traffic, that bring this poison. We in law enforcement are running faster. We're tearing down those silos to go after those that bring the poison here. But Bill, what we're talking about is prevention. What we're talking about is an environment where one pill can and is killing our sons and daughters. These pills are killing our family members. These pills that either they're a poisoning. Our kids are thinking they're Ritalin or they're an ADHD medication, and they're actually pressed fentanyl, this substance that's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. Or our kids think they're taking a pain pill. They're experimenting, but in reality, that Percocet is really pressed fentanyl, and we are dealing with those cases across the Commonwealth. So we have to do a better job on the prevention front. And so my tie probably has a little more red today than I had a neutral tie of blue and red when I stood with Coach Brom from the University of Louisville and Coach Mengione from right here in Lexington. Talk about an extraordinary charismatic man that really lives his faith to announce this effort. It's called Better Off Without It. It is use of, and we will slowly be rolling out NIL announcements with UK players, with U of L players, with Western players down at Western Kentucky University, coaches looking at the camera and saying, you want to play on this court? You want to wear this blue jersey? You're better off without it. You're better off not taking this substance. We know, you and I both grew up in rural Kentucky. We know the power of blue. We know the power if a coach says, you want to play on this court? Or we want to, you see a UK player, for me, it was Richie Farmer growing up. I mean, if he'd want to sell me toothpaste, my whole family was buying the toothpaste. But what we're selling is a prevention message. What we're selling is you're better off without it. And we know that someone like me pounding that podium, telling kids don't do drugs, we know that the efficacy is questionable. My kids don't listen to me anyway. But we know that our kids listen to influencers. They listen and they buy products based upon what they see on social media. We're going to leverage that and do good with that and save lives.
General Coleman, you've also joined an effort to push Congress to permanently classify fentanyl as a Schedule I drug. That would make it the most restrictive category. I mean, you're saying it's getting into things. How does it get into the system?
Well, it's not accidental. Some years ago, back when I was a United States Attorney in the western part of the state, we started seeing fentanyl pop up in other types of drugs. We started to see it in methamphetamine, for instance, and we thought it was being prepared in some of the same labs in Mexico, and perhaps the quality control wasn't up to snuff. What we're seeing now is we're seeing fentanyl present in pills that are made to look like ADHD medication, like Ritalin, like Adderall, made to look like Percocets, things you would find in your medicine cabinet. Anyone would find that it looks, you cannot differentiate between what is the poison, what is the fentanyl, which is such a strong opioid, and what is safe. So what this messaging is stay away from it. If it doesn't come from your medicine cabinet, don't experiment with it, don't try it, because the reality is, I can list you names of families that are waking up without their sons or daughters because they sampled a single pill, Bill. We talk about prevention, and I get so exercised on the prevention front because we have never, growing up, had the lack of a margin of error. I didn't. You didn't. We all made mistakes as kids. And for me, and it certainly wasn't in the drug space, but Bill, we're facing a threat in this Commonwealth like we have never faced before. When one pill can kill one of our kids, we have to talk about it differently. And this Better Off Without It effort is giving kids agency. It's letting kids make decisions for themselves. We're focused on the demographic 13 through 26. That's who we're targeting with this effort. And again, the effort is to save lives, to get them to go down another road.
That's on the prevention end.
Yes.
On the looking back at what has happened end, Kroger has agreed to pay $110 million after it failed to adequately monitor opioid pills that it dispersed across the state. And does that mean that Kroger acknowledges a wrong and wants to make it right?
$110 million. I announced this on the shores of the Ohio River up in Covington at a facility that does an amazing job transitioning those that are incarcerated back to contributing to society. It is Kroger cut a significant check. $110 million is a lot of money to compensate the Commonwealth for the harm done over a period of about 13 years. Kroger, and it's a great American company. We were a little bit nervous in my family that all of our Kroger points would be nuked when we filed suit. And I say that with a smile, but the reality is it's serious conduct. And what we saw is over a 13-year period, Kroger didn't have an internal monitoring system, an effective one, for identifying when suspicious purchases took place. Kroger distributed 11% of all our opioids in the Commonwealth for that period of time. 11%, something like 44 million doses. It's significant. And so Kroger was part of the problem. Kroger is part of the solution. We're taking that money, the $110 million, half of that goes to cities and counties through a formula, going to counties like Harlan County to help mitigate the harm there by the drug epidemic. The other half of the money goes to the Opioid Abatement Commission to fund efforts like our Better Off Without It effort, to fund efforts like Coaches Against Overdoses, a program that I was chatting with earlier today that's leveraging relationships between high school coaches and the influence they have over their players to talk about prevention. We have to do a better job of taking those resources for those that created the harm, created this market for dope, this market for opioids, and doing good with these proceeds.
You've recently said that it is your opinion that the 10 Commandments can be posted in the public school classrooms. You said that is because of recent court rulings?
Yeah, it's the Office of the Attorney General's opinion, my opinion ultimately, because that's what the law is. The law allows, the Supreme Court has decided that those the First Amendment doesn't prohibit that. There's been a tension in the Supreme Court between what's known as the Establishment Clause, and it means that government can't establish its own religion, a government endorsed religion, and the Free Exercise Clause, which means that I get to exercise my faith and worship. And so there's been this tension, and so presently the court has announced that it is permitted. It's permitted for the 10 Commandments to be in context, to be placed in schools as a historical document, as alongside the Magna Carta, alongside the Constitution, playing such a significant role in the buildup of Western democracy. That's certainly permitted.
Your office worked on the case of Scott County Deputy Caleb Conley, who was killed in the line of duty. The person convicted in this has pleaded guilty to 14 felony counts, right?
Bill, probably the toughest day and the proudest day they existed together that I've had in the year plus as Attorney General was a couple of weeks ago in that Scott County courtroom as the judge sentenced, and I'm not going to say his name. I hope to never say his name publicly again, but this menace that took the life of Scott County Sheriff's Deputy Caleb Conley. Deputy Conley was lost his life on the side of I-75 less than 10 seconds after he exited his cruiser. He was ambushed. Life without possibility of parole, plus 70 years. This offender also shot a gentleman here in Fayette County, someone that'll be dealing with significant medical issues for the rest of his life. This is what the family wanted. This was an outcome that I was pleased that we were able to protect the Commonwealth from this shooter. He'll never harm anyone again. But it was both the best and worst day. The worst day because of the nature of hearing Rachel Conley talk about what it's like to try to raise two kids without her husband, or Jolene Conley talk about the loss of her son, or meet Bill Conley, a retired Arizona State Trooper, to talk about his son following him in law enforcement, but yet losing his life on the side of I-75. That's the kind of justice that we're going to seek. That's the kind of collaboration that we're going to do in the AG's office, because working together with the Fayette County Commonwealth Attorney's Office, the Kentucky State Police, the AG's office. That's what I'm talking about when I say we need to tear down silos. That was a great example of that.
There will be an open U.S. Senate seat from Kentucky next year, with Senator Mitch McConnell saying he will leave after this term. Any interest on your part in that?
Senator Mitch McConnell has been the most significant elected official in my lifetime, and the most significant elected official in this Commonwealth since Henry Clay. He will leave a long, long shadow that look forward to collaborating with whoever serves in that role after Senator McConnell leaves office. But he has had a dramatic impact in our Commonwealth, and his legacy is a strong one and one to be proud of.
You were close to him at one point, right?
I was honored to serve as Senator McConnell's legal counsel. I was an FBI agent that lost the ability to walk. I was a paraplegic. I left my dream job as an FBI special agent. Senator McConnell changed the trajectory of my life by affording me the opportunity to serve as his legal counsel. I was honored to do that, honored to still work on issues that I cared about, law enforcement issues, with a limp. I could do that with a cane, and with a limp, I couldn't be an FBI agent anymore. And Senator McConnell is both a friend and a mentor that I respect deeply.
You have no interest, though, in running for the Senate yourself?
I'm living my dream job. I'm honored to serve as the Attorney General of this Commonwealth.
Likely that you will seek re-election?
I filed for re-election the week after, a few days after I won.
You're already a candidate.
Let's be real clear. I'm raising resources in order to make sure that I can serve a full 8 years. No Republican has ever served as Attorney General for 8 years. I want to serve this Commonwealth in this job with everything I've got as long as I can, as long as the people of this Commonwealth allow it.
Thank you for coming by and getting us up to date. We'll have you back soon. Appreciate it.
Look forward to it.
All right. The Attorney General with us today, Russell Coleman. We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. All right, now that we're in March, the pace quickens in the General Assembly. Stay with WKYT for complete coverage, and thank you for joining us for Kentucky Newsmakers. Make it a good week ahead.